You know, in the world of geopolitics, things are rarely ever what they seem on the surface. You might see a threat made way over in Libya, a diplomatic shockwave in the Horn of Africa, and then a very strange silence from Ethiopia. Today, we're going to connect the dots and show you how these three seemingly separate events are actually all part of one single, high-stakes puzzle. So, first up, let's talk about this sudden and, frankly, really tense shift in diplomacy. Egypt is now openly threatening its longtime partner in Libya, General Khalifa Haftar. And this is a huge deal. I mean, considering just how tight these two have been for years. Okay, now at the exact same time, we're seeing this major diplomatic bombshell go off in the Horn of Africa. Israel has just become the first nation on Earth to officially recognize the breakaway region of Somaliland. That's a move with absolutely massive implications for the entire region. And that brings us to the final piece, this really puzzling silence coming out of Ethiopia. You'd think that having Somaliland recognized would be a massive strategic win for them, right? Especially with their close alliance with Israel. So, what's with the hesitation? Why are they so quiet? Okay, let's really dive into this. How are these three fronts, I'm talking a dispute in North Africa, a diplomatic game changer on the Red Sea, and this weird silence from Addis Ababa, how are they all part of the same strategic game? So the first piece of our puzzle, our first clue, really starts with this relationship that's fraying between Egypt's President Sisi and Libya's Khalifa Haftar. I mean, what could possibly sour such a strong alliance? Well, the answer, it turns out, is in the brutal civil war that's raging right next door in Sudan. And here's the core of the problem. Haftar has been providing critical logistical support to the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, which is one of the main groups fighting in Sudan. And that's a direct problem for Egypt, because Cairo sees a potential RSF victory as a major threat to its own national security. So check this out. Here's how it works. Military equipment lands in territory that Haftar controls. From there, it gets funneled through the Jufra Air Base and then trucked across the desert right into Sudan. This route has become the absolute lifeline for the RSF. Now, Egypt has demanded over and over again that Haftar shut it down, but the weapons just keep on flowing. So what's Egypt's move? Well, they're not using direct force. Instead, they're applying strategic pressure. They're sending messages by meeting with Haftar's political enemies in Tripoli, and they're threatening to stop these very lucrative reconstruction projects that Egyptian companies are running in his territory. It's a really calculated squeeze play. Now, let's shift gears to the second front, because this is where things start to really build. Israel's recognition of Somaliland wasn't just some local headline. Oh no. It was a move that triggered an immediate and very forceful strategic response from Cairo. And here's the strategy, and it's pretty clever. Publicly, Egypt is signing what they call commercial agreements to develop ports in nearby Eritrea and Djibouti. But if you look a little closer, analysts are pointing out these upgrades are not for cargo ships. They are building docks deep enough for destroyers and submarines and new facilities for helicopter units. This is pure military power projection, just disguised as commerce. But things got complicated, and they got complicated fast. Somaliland, probably because they were getting threats from Houthi militants just across the water in Yemen, had to walk back its initial offer. They clarified that no permanent Israeli military bases would be built on their soil. So if you can't have a direct base, what's Plan B? Well, it looks like a classic proxy war. The new strategy seems to be for Israel and the United States to arm, train, and fund Somaliland's own forces so they can conduct operations in the Red Sea, especially against the Houthis. And this brings us right to the heart of the matter. I mean, if Israel is Ethiopia's key ally, and Ethiopia desperately needs access to the sea, why hasn't it immediately recognized Somaliland and cashed in on this huge opportunity? What's going on? Well, the answer comes down to this one staggering number. 95%. That is the percentage of all of Ethiopia's maritime trade. We're talking its entire economic lifeblood that flows through the ports of its tiny neighbor, Djibouti. And there's the trap. Djibouti immediately and loudly condemned Israel's recognition of Somaliland. So if Ethiopia were to go against Djibouti on this, it would risk having its main trade route completely choked off. And to make matters even worse, Djibouti's now the same country that's hosting Egypt's growing naval presence. Ethiopia is completely and totally boxed in. So let's put it all together, let's zoom out. These are not isolated events. The pressure on Haftar, the military buildup in the Red Sea, the strategic trap being laid around Djibouti, they are all interconnected pieces of a single coordinated strategy. And the target is Ethiopia. You see, by pressuring Haftar, Egypt is trying to cut supplies to the RSF, who they see as an Ethiopian proxy in Sudan. At the same time, by supporting the Sudanese army, they're placing a hostile force right on Ethiopia's northern border. And by setting up bases in Djibouti and Eritrea, they control Ethiopia's access to the sea. This is a full-spectrum containment strategy. So why? Why all this effort? It all comes back to this one thing, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Egypt sees this massive dam on the Blue Nile as nothing less than an existential threat to its water supply, the very lifeblood of their nation for thousands of years. This whole geopolitical chess game is a response to that one perceived threat. You know, one analyst captured Egypt's strategy perfectly with this phrase. This isn't about some sudden, all-out war. No, this is a slow, methodical campaign. It's about applying military, economic, and diplomatic pressure from every single direction to weaken Ethiopia and force it to the negotiating table over that dam. And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. Facing economic strangulation and military encirclement, what is Ethiopia going to do next? Will it bow to the pressure and finally make concessions on the dam? Or will it make a bold, maybe even risky move to try and break this siege? The stability of the entire Horn of Africa might just depend on its answer.